few questions, and I'm hoping you might indulge me to go a little over time, if that's okay, given that.
There'll be a protest.
Because I've heard the rather sanguine questions that Senator Ruston's put to you about the changeover and the fact that it may be an advantage, but there's also some concerns that have been raised with me about the level of public consultation and involvement that I'd like to take you through. So you've confirmed that the offshore petroleum and greenhouse gas storage environment regulations require proponents of new large-scale petroleum development projects in Commonwealth waters to submit an OPP, offshore project proposal, but I understand that the regulations this is covered with one or more activities that are undertaken for the purposes of the recovery of petroleum other than on an appraisal basis. I suppose I understand that another way of saying appraisal is exploration, so exploration activities aren't covered by the requirement to provide an OPP, is that right?
That's correct. So the process normally is exploration that may comprise seismic or exploration drilling. If something is found,
yes,
the next phase could be appraisal, which may mean more seismic or some more appraisal drilling. And then it's only when there's sufficient reserves to justify...
Right, okay. I understood appraisal to mean I was going to tease out. So that includes seismic activities, seismic surveys, and also exploratory drilling.
Yep.
Okay. So the drilling operation that occurred in the Gulf of Mexico, my understanding that was exploratory drilling at that time, the well there. Are you aware of whether that's the case? Certainly that's what's said.
The answer to that is yes and no. The way the industry works in the Gulf of Mexico is a little bit different to here in that sense. Here, typically a well is for exploration, for appraisal, or for development and production. So if you like, our exploration wells are used once to explore, then they're plugged and abandoned.
Sure.
In the Gulf of Mexico, an exploration well, if it finds something, is usually linked up within, in some cases, days, but often weeks or months, to existing infrastructure to exploit the hydrocarbons. So an exploration well can become a development well.
Ongoing well. But certainly I'm clear then that it's not just seismic surveys, it would be an exploration drilling well. It wouldn't be covered under the OPP requirement.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, thank you for that. I'm interested
But a development well would be.
Yes, I understand that. I'm interested in the rationale for that, and it's in the regulations, of course, but it's the rationale for having an OPP, and I'm quoting from the website, your website, is that it provides confidence to the proponent, stakeholders and the wider community that the project has been thoroughly assessed against clear criteria and found to be environmentally acceptable. And it would seem to me that wouldn't it also be appropriate, and it may not be a question that you can answer given that it's in regulation, it may be a matter of policy, but wouldn't it be appropriate that indeed exploratory operations like seismic surveys or exploratory drilling of wells would also, I would think, be designed to engender consultation with the public and community confidence about the environmental assessments there as well?
Yeah, so
I'm interested in the distinction.
Yeah, so the requirement under the regs is for all petroleum activities, exploration, seismic or drilling, appraisal and development, to have an environment plan accepted by NOPSEMA.
Yes.
There's a two-tier test before we can accept it. It must demonstrate that impacts are acceptable and that impacts have been managed to as low as reasonably practical. Also in the acceptance criteria is one about consultation. So
I'll come back to that if you don't mind, because I've actually got specific questions about that. But my point is that the environment plan is different to the OPP, isn't it? The offshore petroleum.
Yeah, and that's where I was coming to.
Yes.
So the environment plan covers all petroleum activities. So every petroleum activity has to have an environment plan. For very long-term projects, and a development project may take 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years to get up and running, and then it may run another 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 years. There is an additional requirement of an offshore project proposal, which typically should be undertaken at the early stage of project planning to tease out and understand the effects on the environment, potential effects, and that it's an acceptability test. we cannot accept it unless there's a case that the impacts are acceptable.
Yes, thank you for that. Let me take you then to the environment plan documents, and these are certainly issues that have been raised with me by constituents. So under the former EPBC process, a full referral was published by the Department of the Environment, and this is where I suppose I would be putting to you that the suggestion that there hasn't been a loss in terms of trying to eradicate duplication, but there's actually been a change in processes whereby the public don't have as much information available anymore. So there was previously a full referral published, but now under this current process, only, and please correct me if I'm wrong, only the proponent's contact details, the decision status and the associated date is published when an environmental plan is submitted. And then 10 days after the environmental plan has been submitted, and in the case of appraisal activities, there's been no OPP provided, only 10 days later, a summary of the environmental plan is made public, and that's after the proponent has already been approved. And so even after the approval's given, the entire environmental plan is not available to all stakeholders. Is that right?
Can I just correct you on
Sure.
one thing? The environment plan summary is published after, within 10 days of NOPSEMA accepting the plan.
Yeah, so it's already been accepted and then a summary is published.
Yes, but it could be several months, or in some cases a lot longer, between the point at which a proponent first gives us the plan and the point at which it's acceptable.
But it's post-acceptance. That's when the summary is actually published for the public to see. It's already, once acceptance has already occurred, not before.
Yes, because the expectation, and it's the philosophical position, is that good practice should be that the proponent of an activity goes out and talks to individuals and organisations that might be affected very, very early in the project planning. So it doesn't sit in its little
No, ideally
bubble.
that would occur, certainly.
And that's the way the legislation, the regulations are encouraging industry to move.
Yes.
And that's certainly the way which our team is interpreting it. So when we get the environment plan, if there is not evidence to say who's been consulted with, why those people were consulted with and not others, the text of all written correspondence between the activity proponent and those that they have consulted with, it doesn't meet the requirements of the regs, so they go back, and it has happened on many occasions. They have been sent back to do more consultation.
This is a bit frustrating because there's quite a few questions of clarification that people are wanting to know. So I might just indicate that the concerns that have been raised, and I'll ask these to go on notice, is that essentially then the theory is good consultation will have occurred, but the problem is unless there's transparency about what the process is and people are only advised about it at the end of the process once the environmental plan's already been accepted and only a summary then is provided, those people who would consider that they should have been consulted or maybe relevant persons won't necessarily know what the degree of consultation has been. So the questions are about what process is available for people who consider that they may be relevant persons to first of all establish that they are relevant persons, because that's not actually defined clearly in the regulations or the legislation. I had a series of questions to try and ascertain who are relevant persons. I'll put those on notice, but this is time important for my constituents, so questions back quickly would be appreciated. And also, in terms of raising issues with NOPSEMA, for people, when concerns are raised by stakeholders with NOPSEMA about what's in a submitted environmental plan, people want to know what's the process that NOPSEMA has to determine if a stakeholder is raising relevant points or not. At the moment, the public perception is that it's one-sided. There's the proponent providing information to NOPSEMA, and NOPSEMA, in no doubt in good faith, is assessing that information. But without having the second part of the equation, which is the public knowing what's going on, it's difficult to ascertain whether or not the environmental plan is adequate from the public perception or not. So I'll put those things on notice, but that's why I did want some time to explore these things today, rather than suggesting that it's all well and good and wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.